You're listening to Graphic Novel Explorers Club podcast, an audiobook club.
Thanks for checking out today's episode of Graphic Novel Explorers Club. I'm one of your hosts, Dennis Supajana. I'm joined, as usual, by
Johnny Flores
and
Francis Preziosi.
Today we're discussing Everything is Flammable by Gabrielle Bell. We hope you've already read the book because all three of us have, and we'll be discussing it in detail. So beware, spoilers ahead. We'd love for you to share your opinion and thoughts on our social media. Our Twitter is @GeneExplorersClub. We're also found on Facebook, and you can email us at geneexplorersclub@gmail.com. Graphic Novel Explorers Club is available on iTunes, Stitcher, and wherever podcasts are found. In today's episode, we are covering Everything is Flammable by Gabrielle Bell. Just a little bit of background info. Gabrielle was originally born in England. She's roughly around Johnny and I's age, around her not mid 40s, like 41, 42.
I thought I was older than you.
No, you are.
This has been established. I actually retain the fact that we're the same age.
Yeah.
Separated by a few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So you are technically older by 2 weeks. Born in England originally, then moved to like Mendocino County. She started publishing around the late 90s. Pretty much well known for her anthology work. One of her anthologies, let's see here, Cecil and Jordan in New York, was actually turned into a short film as part of an anthology film called Tokyo. And she partnered with Michael, I think his name
Michel Gondry.
Michel Gondry of Sunshine of the Eternal Moon. Mind, whatever.
And numerous awesome videos. Like around the world with Daft Punk.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did that.
Is he responsible for that?
Yeah, and the White Stripes Fell in Love with the Girl Lego video.
Are we talking about a man right now? Let's keep it to the woman author.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry,
it's 2018. I have no platforms
I was trying
anymore.
to focus on the more important aspect.
I just love Michel Gondry. I just like Michel Gondry.
But anyway, regardless, so she's an accomplished, I guess you could call filmmaker and comic book artist. But this is her first collected full-on graphic novel as opposed to anthology.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I thought what was interesting when I read about her, too, is that she actually started with mini comics.
Right.
And that reminded me of another book we reviewed previously, Too Much Coffee Man, and he started with little mini comics.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was going to mention that as well, and thanks for taking my line. No, just kidding. But I saw an interview with her, and she talked about how she would go to these comic book stores, a specific one, actually, in this case, and she would bring her Xerox copy comic books, which is exactly like Too Much Coffee Man. So I guess that was a very late 90s thing to do. Which
was zine. It was basically a zine.
Yeah, before social media, you can't. Yeah.
Right, which makes sense. You would just like do these small black and white comics, go to the Kinko's, and when there were Kinko's, and run off a bunch of copies, staple them, fold them into little books, and then try to sell them for like a dime or something.
Collating party. That's what
Right.
you would do, a collating party.
And side note, she lives in Brooklyn, but her mom's still in Mendocino County. But she does do actual appearances, and she sometimes appears at places and does like portraits and stuff like that, which would have been cool if she lived around here.
You know who's always looking for portraiturists? The State Fair.
Oh, really?
You never had your where you're like on a skateboard or
yeah.
paragliding or.
That's true. When I'm on a zany
Gabrielle
car.
Bell, if you're looking for full-time employment or temporary seasonal employment, California State Fair, 2 weeks. In July and August.
Right. So anyway, back to the book. This is unusual for some of the books that we've looked at. It's sort of, even though it's a full-on graphic novel, I still felt it was more of an anthology than some of the previous ones we've read. There's just chapter. Every story is in its own little comic, right? It has its title. There are always 6 panels.
Yeah, even if the story runs short, the next page it'll just be like 2 panels, and then she leaves the other 4 blank.
Right, exactly. So it's a very structured format for that. It takes place between around summer 2014 to approximately summer 2015, so about a year. And I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I don't want to go through the whole
It felt
story.
like a year. It took a year of my life was lost reading this book.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, I will start off by planting my flag and saying I really like the book.
So I'll say this. I got really excited to read this. I had no idea what it was about. And I read the first 2 pages and I was like, nope.
I love it when Francis gives a nope.
Yeah. I was like, so, but I stuck with it.
Oh, so you read it unlike Johnny has. And
Well,
I read
so-
the whole thing. How
I
dare
know,
you?
No.
but there's several books you have not finished.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
I'm a busy man.
So with this one though, like I will say, like I skimmed it a lot and I felt like this was very much like a teenager who wrote a Dear Diary who had nothing to say.
Yeah, that's
Like,
how I felt.
Today, I woke up and I went to the store and I got some milk. I wanted to make French toast and I got home and I didn't have eggs. So I just drank some milk. Then I went to the library and saw my friend. Like that's how the whole book read to me. And it just went back and forth. Like it's not about it's about California. I mean, it's deeper than that, but
Right. I'll just give a quick summary as
Thank you.
opposed to what we have done in the past where we've gone through the
Through the
various
whole
stories.
book, yeah.
Basically, it's about slice of life of her life in New York, but also the main thread of the story is her mom's house burns down in Mendocino County, and
California.
California, and she's not forced, I would say, but she has to go help her mom basically resettle.
Well, if I remember correctly, her brothers weren't going to help her.
Right.
So
Right.
she went.
But her mom also didn't want her help.
Yeah.
Like she kind of forces herself on her mom. She kind of wants to be the hero.
Right. And then she, even in a bit of a meta moment, taught her mom, excuse me.
Well, while Dennis is coughing, there's several times where she has like a daydream about being the hero and saving a kid on an airplane or like a lost child and reuniting the child with his parents.
But she even talks about how she wants to use this for her book. Mm-hmm. So this would be great material for the book. And so she goes out and helps her mom. It's the process of setting her mom back up. Her mom originally,
staying in a tent.
Then eventually they're looking at a trailer that she has. And then they're looking at a pre-fab home in the area and shopping. And the course of her experiences in California as well as some experiences in New York. And then I think bookends with her going back to see her mom once the prefab house is complete.
Yeah. Also, I think it's important. I don't know if we've touched on this yet. She's very open about her mental illness that she suffers from anxiety and depression. And after reading this book, like you want to get hit by a bus, like it makes you depressed. And you're like, even the picture in the back of the author is friggin' depressing.
Yeah.
And I don't think she did a good job conveying what that mental illness is like.
Well, there was 2 things that I kept going back and forth about this book when I was reading it, or her, I guess, the character and the real person is. I kept being completely fucking frustrated with her, where I just wanted to, just like fucking grow up,
Yeah.
just grow the fuck up, handle your problems, and then I would swing the other way and just be like, okay, she obviously is somewhat mentally ill or has hang-ups that prevent her from functioning as an adult. But then I would get frustrated and go back and just be like, you know what, just fucking handle your shit. And I would just get so frustrated while reading the book, and then I'd get sympathetic again. The other thing I kept going back to was like, she seems to put herself in situations so that she has stories to tell to her therapist, and then and like keeps herself stuck. So she has things to tell her therapist and things to write about. Instead of like, it's almost like the Batman thing where it's like they don't allow Batman to ever grow up and become a functioning adult.
Well, and
she's just stuck, made herself stuck.
I think part of it too, because I was getting that way too, but she's very enabled. Like she has this mystery friend and you don't know what happens to him in the end. Like, here, I literally bought you a brand new cell phone. Here, I brought you a new computer.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to do everything for you. And I thought that was going to turn sexual and it didn't. I was kind of surprised because no man is just going to give a woman a computer or a cell phone. Okay, ladies? I'm not saying...
Look,
but
I gave you that computer and cell
Right.
phone purely out of friendship. What happened afterwards was what happened.
Yeah, and I think it's important too. Like she has this garden, and she's becoming very obsessed with her garden. But that's it. That's her life. And it's almost like go out and live in the world. Like go do something.
Yeah.
Like of course you're depressed. You just fucking sit around and mope around all day. Like I have no sympathy for you. But go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you reminded me of her tomato. She has tomato garden and cucumber garden. She has all the. I should just say she has a garden, and I kept trying to find parallels between her and the garden because the garden gets healthy and then it gets infested with insects and and then it starts to die and then she's jealous of other people's gardens.
And her friends like neglect it when she's like not. They don't pay as much attention to it as she thought they should have.
And I kept trying to find parallels between her and the garden. I was just like, in the end, I realized she's just talking about her fucking garden. That has nothing to do with like the story at large.
I thought she did make a parallel between her garden and the success she saw other writers and comic book artists having, because she felt like some other people had more book deals than her, and it was a parallel to her garden where she didn't feel like, even though she was taking care of the garden, she wasn't getting the opportunities that maybe other people did.
I didn't see it. Well, I mean, I got that, but I just didn't. I just didn't think it was like a strong.
Yeah.
But then the thing is that someone's phone.
It's not mine.
Oh.
So, I just like to say this all the time. I'm a writer by trade. Like that's how I am. That's my profession. Not as creative, unfortunately, but as a writer, your main job is to edit and to find where the story is. And I think she just saw this as an opportunity to write a story, and she never edited down. She never made a connection with the reader. And I think had she pared it down, it could have been more impactful. But it is literally, my mom's house burned down. I'm flying to California. I'm flying back to New York, back to California, back to New York. Like,
now we have to go out shopping.
Yeah, and it was literally there. Yeah, and she did have some key opportunity, I think, especially with the therapist, to really talk about what that mental illness is like. I will say one scene that I finally connected with her and kind of got it was at one point she's helping her mom, and her mom has these dogs, and she's recalling the story when she was a little girl, and she like had a cat, and the dogs,
ghost cat chapter.
Yeah, and these dogs like kept like eating the cats or killing the cats, but her stepfather was like really upset about this. Like he really mourned the cat and she didn't. And it looks like in the illustration, he shoves her head into the ground. And I think he's physically abusive, but that's all she shows. So you don't know how. And then she kind of hits on it later on in the story. She kind of finally asks her mom, like, or she has a conversation with her grandmother or somebody.
Right.
So some family, like, I'm sorry, am I taking over what you were
No.
going to say? Okay. Like she has conversations. She's finally brave enough to ask. And she does it for the story. She even says it like, you know, why didn't you do more for me? Why didn't you help me? And her mom was like, I couldn't. I had 4 kids. I'm stuck here. And I will say, because we were from Northern California and I used to live in Amador, it is very isolating to live in a rural area. And the mother did feel isolated. And her physical abuse that she endured and just her depression somehow transposed onto her child, her daughter, which I think does happen a lot. But I felt like the mother actually had like a real mental illness, and I felt like the writer's just mopey. Like it's not, and unfortunately,
that's perfectly sums up. She's just mopey.
Yeah, and I think had she expanded on more like her childhood and what made her the way she is, and I think almost she held back because she didn't want to go there or it's too hard for her, and I have some respect for that. But again, just edit down your story, and I didn't feel bad for her. Like,
no.
And I'm sorry. And I also felt like, hello, idiots, don't have friggin' cats roaming around. We have these big, stupid, vicious dogs. It's not that complicated.
The other part of the thing that this. Oh, were you gonna say something?
Well, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say. I actually feel the exact opposite. I felt like I connected with the story almost immediately, and I could sense her depression and anxiety actually coming out through her what you would interpret as her mopiness. And some of her words, and that's the thing. I think it's almost like talking to someone who has depression, because they give you glimmers of what the source is without directly saying I have depression. And I think Frances hit on a lot of it for me. The ghost cat one in particular, I thought was very telling. Much like you said, when this particular cat had died, she didn't feel like remorse. As you know, some kids don't necessarily feel remorse the same way. And her stepdad was actually upset at her that she didn't feel remorse the way he felt he should. And she comically made it seem like he was hitting her head, and it was drawn in a very comical fashion, bonk, bonk, bonk. But you could tell that there was a lot of pain involved because she, at the scene afterwards, she's hugging the dog and talking about how good the dog is because the dog was the one who killed the cat.
Yeah.
And so it's those little glimmers. And then, like you said, just the way the mom is behaving, I can see how it's hard for a parent or for a grown child trying to deal with your own shit. And then suddenly you have a parent who you thought was together and suddenly is not together. And you're trying to remotely, as best you can through phone and maybe occasional visits, try to insert yourself into their life and try to steer the course. And so I was very sympathetic at that point. And like you said, she eventually talks to her grandmother, and it's clear that the grandmother must have had her own issues because she was crying. Both of them were crying at the same time, where she actually confronted her grandmother for the first time in an emotional moment, where it's like, why didn't you do more to help my mom? She was clearly needed help. She needed assistance. Why weren't you the mother that she needed when she needed you? And, you know, the grandmother was just, I don't know why. And the truth is that that's how it is. It's not like a fairy tale story or a comedy or, a movie or a TV show where a parent or a child suddenly realizes, oh, I need to extend a hand and actually help someone. Sometimes life's shitty, and it's not because another parent or a child is super negligent and super awful. I mean, she kind of even talks about that, about TV moms, but it's just because the reality is that they're somewhere in between. They're not this awful mommy dearest mom where they're just beating the child completely with a stick, and they're also not the super caring always in your life mom. There's somewhere, sometimes it's in the area in between, which it's hard to deal with for a child.
Kurt Vonnegut wrote, like, nobody thinks they're the bad guy in their story.
Right.
Yeah, you know.
Right. Exactly.
Thing.
And it's not necessarily that they're the bad guy, you know. And so, yeah, I don't know. Like, the story connected for me a lot, and I actually felt sympathy for her. I understand your guys' frustration with her because she does seem like she's not moving forward, but I think that's part of her social anxiety, and she's paralyzed. And so she focuses on things that she can control. She doesn't focus on the bigger stuff because it feels so overwhelming. So she focuses on the smaller things like the plants, the garden, because that's something manageable. And then when she can't, that's why she gets so OCD about it. So when it falls apart, that's like the one thing I can manage that's really tiny, that's just in a pot. I can't control that. And then suddenly you fall apart and you feel like you can't control anything.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Dennis made me feel like a jerk.
Well, and that's the thing where I would flip-flop back and forth, where I'd just be like completely sympathetic for her, and then at times I'd just be like, "The fuck, just fucking grow up."
Yeah, I'm gonna speak for Johnny and myself. I'm gonna be like a man, speak for somebody. I've known Dennis and Johnny for a long time, and
unfortunately,
Dennis is very dutiful son. And he has two loving parents. Johnny and I both have experienced estrangements from our mothers at some point. And it's funny because Johnny had actually posted this really beautiful New York Times article about how family estrangement is more common than what we think. And then we started reading this book. And so I think for it's interesting because I think for children who are estranged from their parents and they can still make a life for themselves, whereas she did put distance between her and her mom as much as she could, and there was estrangement. And I did see her need to still try to make it work with her mom. That's why she wanted to be the hero. She wanted to help her mom. She was trying to build something, but because like it held her back so much, I think that's where I was getting frustrated. Like we all have that. I think a lot of us have experienced that. Like just because like your relationship with your mom was not good or your childhood wasn't good, like you can still make a really great life for yourself. And she's a successful comic book writer, you know, and to some degree. But I think from that viewpoint, that's where I was getting frustrated too. Because I could see some of that, but then part of me is again like, get it together. Like
that's the other thing this book brought up for me is nature versus nurture.
Right.
Because like I grew up in a house where you weren't permitted to be like, well, poor me. It was like, no, get out and fucking do what you need to do, because if not, you're gonna get your ass beat. So you had to like, okay, well, I got to go do this. I can't take time to reflect on, well, is this gonna make me look foolish, or am I gonna, is this gonna be a thing that's gonna, end up sadly? It was like, nope, just get out there and fucking do it. You had no choice. There was no nurture.
Well, and for me, it spoke to the duty of a child to their parent. So it's one thing to estrange yourself, but if you feel like you're obligated to, because you're the only child who actually cares, regardless of what past incidents may have happened, it's hard to try to live your life and then try to take care of your parent as well as they're older.
Yeah.
And you're realizing like this is just going to get worse,
Yeah, and I do agree with that, because my sister does take care of my mom, and I am grateful for that, and that does relieve a lot of burden for me. Like, and I know that and I acknowledge that, but at the same time, my mom does so much more for my sister. So it's kind of like, well, that's like
right.
It's this really weird cycle, but her brothers didn't help. So
So you're the brother.
yeah. I was like,
So I wanted to discuss one thing in this book that I thought was, I was like, this is what started this whole story. It was the comical way her mom burned her house down was a candle.
Right.
It was burning and started to lean over, and then it fell on the mom's pants, which ignited, and then she was trying to put the pants out, took them off, threw them on the bed, and then just whoof, the whole house went up in fire. And and I was just, I don't know, I just thought that was fucking hilarious. I was like, that's a pretty funny way to burn your house down.
I did, and I also kind of felt like, again, like this family's a bunch of idiots.
Yeah,
like you don't go to sleep with a burning candle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the mom, obviously, I mean, you get peaks of, like, I think she had another later abusive relationship that she talked about. So the mom has a lot of problems and a lot of issues. And I mean, how do you end up in an area, I don't know, like in Mendocino County, where your whatever kind of house burns down and you're in a tent and then you're living in a trailer. I don't know.
And she was okay with it. She's like, yeah, we just pee outside, or we go to
Yeah.
Starbucks to go to the bathroom. I'm like, how do you live like that? Like, you're so defeated.
Yeah.
I will say too, you brought up a good point. I really loved the title of this book, and because in California specifically, for the past 3 years, we've had horrendous wildfires, mudslides right now as a result of those wildfires, and because they even say this, like, it's so dry, California's so dry, there's no chance to save her house. And it's a good metaphor, because while your personal possessions are flammable, your personal relationships are also so flammable, and you really have to protect them and water them like your garden and care for it. Oh, maybe that's the garden.
analogy.
Yeah. See? Okay.
Oh, yeah. And then to go back to your earlier point about her weird, mysterious friends, I don't think that's weird. I think sometimes in your life, you run into people that you just end up taking care of.
That's one of the things I wrote down about this book is, who are these people? Like, there were so many characters that just all of a sudden they're just dropped in. You're all, wait, was this someone that was earlier in the book? And I had to go back and look.
What happened to the other characters? Like, well, because at first, like in the beginning, she has her friend in New York, and he's a big part of it. Then all of a sudden, he's not in it anymore. But some random
German guy on a bicycle comes into town for a little while. And I was like, okay, that's all right. It's just, the guy's staying there, and then they kick him out. And then then there was just some random people at the beginning, and then you go out to California, and you're seeing some people, and it took me a while to be like, who's okay? So the people I wrote down, there's Gabrielle, her mom, which I don't know her name, Gus, and I was like, who the fuck is Gus? And I had to kind of keep track. I was like, okay, Gus. So Gus is a ex-convict. He's kind of
who lives with
antisocial
on
guy.
The land with her mom. Right?
Yeah, on the mom, and they have. Gus and the mom have a contentious relationship where she needs him to be there, but at the same time she doesn't want him there, and he doesn't feel welcomed, but he still stays on the property. And the abusive boyfriend, he beat that guy up and chased him off. And the mom doesn't know that until later on,
right?
Which went nowhere. I thought that was going to be some sort of conflict, and it never turned into anything.
That's a key point. I felt like a lot of that story, like a lot of this book, like, there's no resolution.
There's no conflict though. There's hardly any conflict.
I think that speaks to her newness to this format, because I think she was writing it more in the anthology way, which I bought into people coming in and out, because that's how it is. People come in and out of your life. But there was no cohesive story. So it wasn't like she was telling a story from point A to C.
It was more freeform.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this is what happened on this day. It's kind of like illustrating different parts of her diary.
And then there was Primo the dog. That was what character I wrote down.
Right.
And then I never caught his name, and I put creepy in quotation marks.
The
creepy
prefab-
guy who sold the
prefab
prefab house.
Yeah.
Because there's times where he what did he call her, a sweetheart, or he's like, you're pretty or something like that, and she doesn't really acknowledge his
Advances.
statement. Yeah. And then later, after the house is made and it's delivered, he gives them some just extra supplies that he
salmon. He gives him salmon.
but then he also gives them some home
Oh
supplies.
yeah,
Once the
and
house is,
paint. Yeah.
yeah. And then she says thank you, and then he says like thank you, hugs her from behind and kisses her on the cheek, and her eyes get big, and then that was kind of the end of it.
I
And
meant
so-
to ask her on Twitter, because she is on Twitter, about that, because I'm with you. At first, it just seemed like he was, I don't know, hippy dippy.
Okay, again, a guy's not gonna give a girl anything unless he really likes her or wants something.
Not all guys do that.
Yeah.
Creepy
In this
guys,
book,
yes,
they do.
Yes, a lot of guys do.
Well, a lot
I
of
will
guys
side
in
with-
this don't, because they give her cell phones and they help her out, not for anything.
Well, you don't know that, like, because she doesn't finish the story, and you don't know what their intention is. Like, she never asks. She's very naive in this way, and I'm sorry, just like the way that I was raised, I think a lot of women were raised. That's just ingrained in you from day one. Like, you just know, like, and
And
I
Gus
s-
is
I-
up there for like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not altruistic. He has a place to stay, but like Gus never. He miss. Gabrielle says something in his about the mom and Gus, and Gus is like, no, I'm not interested in her in that way, like romantically.
Yeah.
And then he's just up there and he's kind of protective of her, and he even makes comments about like, why aren't you kids around? Why aren't you guys here to like help and support your mom?
I've seen relationships like that, so that actually rang true to me, where there was just basically a live-in handy person
Yeah.
that had no
I'll
my
give you a-
aunt has adopted so many of my cousin's friends. Like, yeah, it's very
I'll give you a
similar.
prime example of live and help, although it did wind up turning romantic.
Is this Sasha?
No.
Oh.
Angela and Tony from Who's the Boss?
Oh my god!
Oh, wow.
And then it did. You know, I was just this completely off topic. I was just thinking about this the other day. I was like, for an 80s sitcom, Tony and Angela, you know, they're not together they're friends, it's platonic, and then they kind of start dating, and then
Right.
I believe, if I remember correctly, kind of screws it up, and they never wind up together. Like at the end of the series.
Oh, they don't?
Yeah, at the end of the series, I think it got canceled before they could make them.
Angela.
I thought they got married.
Yeah, I thought they did.
Really? I don't
Yeah,
think they
I
did.
even want to say there was like a spin-off where they were already
Yeah.
married.
AOOA Angela.
Let's
Yeah.
Google it after.
We'll have to
this.
Google
Yeah.
afterwards, but I'm saying they never ended up together.
To speak to Francis's point, I think she's very aware of when things like that happen, because
Oh, that's why her eyes like kind of like.
well, and
bulged
it's
up.
the way
Yeah.
she drew it, the way she drew that guy in particular. There's a particular scene that Johnny's describing where his nose is drawn like over her cheek, so
Oh, yeah.
he's really all over her, and he says creepy stuff like, "We come in and out of our lives," and it just at first I just thought he was just a hippy dippy, but it's clear he was
Trying to hit on her.
doing some more.
Grossly.
Whereas when she draws her other friends, they seem pretty disinterested. Just like, let's just get this dealt with,
Yeah.
you know. And sometimes there are friends like that.
Well, and sometimes there's friends where, and she might be like this with her friends over there. You're kind of so pathetic. Nobody would really be interested in dating you because you're just like, you're so fucking helpless. I can't get tied up with you.
But they
Like-
want to help her.
But
a
like,
lost
yeah, I'll
puppy.
help you. You're my
I
friend.
don't know why
but-
Johnny looked at me when he said that.
It was very
Yeah.
direct look.
Mm-hmm.
I will say another thing that I did kind of relate to her with. and I can get this. It's very difficult. You have to have such a thick skin to be in the creative industry because people are just going to criticize your work, like we're doing
Like
to
our
her
podcast.
right now. Yeah.
You guys are.
I can't tell you how many times I've written something and it just comes back like completely redone, and it's very defeating. And if you're already not mentally strong, and you do start to get down this rabbit hole of like, well, why is this person successful and why aren't I? Like, what are they doing different? Or how come, but I don't think she is strong enough. And it is hard. It is hard to be an artist or a writer or a craftsman to make things.
And it doesn't sound like she gets, like she barely exists off of whatever income comes in through her comics and graphic novel. Like she's probably not, she's probably just living hand to mouth probably most of the time.
I don't know. I think she's more successful than you think.
I got that impression too. Like
She's going to visit her mom quite a bit. Flights from New York.
She borrows money though. At the beginning of the book, she borrows some money to buy some stuff.
That's true.
And if you can't replace your computer, like,
Right.
and you're, but I think too, that's right. Something about the internet and like her mental stability, she couldn't have internet.
Yeah, she wanted the internet off. Well, I think also for work, so she wasn't distracted. And,
and looking at WebMD, I think.
that was
stuff.
the other
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, but I think the problem was that her money, because there was one point where she mentions like she won't get money for 6 months. So
Right, because of her
these
book deal.
deals.
That's
Yeah.
right. You get like an advance, and then
Yeah,
And
then
the writer-
probably sells every so often come in.
and the writer gets like $1 for every 25.
Yeah,
That's-
and
Is that it? Really?
Yeah,
Holy
when
shit!
you go through a major publisher, the author's profit margin is
small.
That's why a lot of people now they choose to self-publish either through Amazon or
in fact, you can buy her books directly from her Etsy page.
and she's even like she did. So here was an interesting thing about this book and about Gabrielle. Like I was obviously over it in the first 3 pages, but I finished it. Then the next day I was like, oh, okay, like now I'm gonna Wikipedia her. Like now I kind of want to see, and I was like. There's nothing stood out like on her webpage, and like she did do like I'm putting my books on sale because it's the holidays and that's what you're supposed to do, and I'm like, you're even friggin' self-defeated about like
Yeah.
your holiday sale. Like,
See, I found that charming about her. I found the humor, and just like you talked about her depressing-looking photo in the back, I think that was intentional. Some of it, I just
You think it was comically put there to look
Yeah.
depressing?
well, no, and this is where I get like even more annoyed. Don't make that your shtick to sell things. Don't make depression and mental illness like your hook as a writer if you're not really depressed.
I think you just made me like realize like what is the most frustrating thing about this is she's very talented. I love her illustrations. I love the way it looks. She is gifted at storytelling, but this book is just like so off. It's just slightly off of being great. And it's frustrating. I think that's it.
I think you might be right. Like,
I think
it's there, the potential.
The potential is there, and it's just so fucking frustrating that it's not there because you see it.
And I think if she shortened it, she streamlined it, she expanded and had some on those conflicts, had some resolutions, it would be a much better story.
And maybe workshopped it. Maybe went to some
Yeah.
writer workshops and.
Well, I think if it was billed as more of an anthology, it would be better. I don't know. I liked it a lot, so I felt like it
Well, to this one,
resonated.
you're wrong.
And
I think you're just, but in general too, like I know it's like you are much more sympathetic to those types of situations. I think
Sure.
to
We're just
mental
a couple
illness.
of assholes over here.
Yeah, I know. We're
I
just,
know.
well, I think
Get over your
we-
depression.
I think Johnny and I grew up on the streets. We had to fend for ourselves, and we just made and same thing. Like we make it work, and I think too. Okay, I'm gonna go here for a second. So just this past winter, like I suffered from SAD. I've never had this before. Seasonal affective disorder. I didn't know what was going on. I was really tired, and I have vitamin B deficiency issues. So I went to my doctor. He's like, no. He's like, you're actually like a little bit like you're depressed because of lack of sun. I was like, what? And I'm not trying to minimize mental illness. I told myself that day, I was like, hell no. I was like, I'm not going to let myself go down this rabbit hole. And so I really like had to make an effort. Like I would not hit snooze. I would take a shower. Like I would go outside. Like whenever it was nice, I would get as much sun as I could because that's supposed to help. And it did. But I think she just wallows in it and goes down the rabbit hole and she stays there. Like she purposely
agree.
stayed there. And it's like, you could do some things to get yourself up. And well, in her defense, okay, she did have like a fancy party. She wanted to have like a fancy birthday party to like try to lift her spirits, but it was so cold.
Glamour.
Yeah, glamour. Everyone had to like, everyone like had to wear like jackets. No one could see the glamorous outfits.
Yeah, I thought that
And
was
she
funny.
also received an awful call, I think, from her mom that kind
Yeah.
of brought everything down. So that, you know, I don't know. I understand. You think that people can just bring themselves up, but sometimes it's a big struggle.
Yeah.
And I do know that. Like, and I'm not saying like, and mine is obviously temporary and it's not like a real depression, but and I know that everyone can do it, but there are little things like they do tell you, like when you look it up, these are the things you can do to help make it better. And it is like get out of bed, like just so. And I will say, like, it didn't seem like she had any substance abuse problems or anything. Like, she didn't self-medicate. Well, because some people do. Like,
okay.
yeah,
Okay.
like,
I was
only
like,
one
what?
thing she's like, okay, like, I had 2 glasses of wine. Now I can talk to my mom. Like,
Right.
that's,
Yeah.
I do 2 glasses of wine for breakfast. Come on.
And then I think it's her depression is kind of, and her anxiety is kind of summarized by one particular, I don't know what we call it, chapter or story, where she talks about how people have invisible impediments, and she imagines hers as being always having to carry a bicycle.
Oh
over her
yeah,
head.
Oh,
or the
yeah, that
monster.
is-
The one
Right.
person had a monster,
And it's
another
so
person had
heavy.
like a mailbox or something like
Yeah,
that.
it was like a bumper cars kind of car
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah.
And then, so she's going through the whole day carrying this bicycle, and by the end of the day, she's exhausted.
Yeah.
Which is just depression. That's what it is.
I think that was a really good analogy, but unfortunately, this book is so much. Those beautiful parts get lost. You just forget it because you're just keep reading about the thing.
All right. Well, we kind of know our feelings about the book. Well, why don't we wrap it all up? Johnny, why don't you start us off with it?
Well, I really like the art. I thought they're very cute drawings. I really like the art. I think after discussing it, I realize I like the book, but it's not as good as it could be. I don't dislike it. I don't like it.
Gotcha.
I'm just frustrated with the story. I just feel like if some, and who knows how long she actually worked on the story.
About 3 years.
Story or the illustrations, there's a difference.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
So, I feel like the story. I'm gonna probably revisit this book in about 6 months and see how I feel about it then.
Gotcha.
Like some time to think about it and walk away from it, and then come back and I'll read it and see. Because I did that with Why the Last Man. The first time I read Why the Last Man, I was like, I don't like this story.
Right.
And then I read it a second time and I was like, nope, I really love this. So, what about you, Francis?
So after like the second page, I was like, I'd rather be reading Luther Strode right now.
What?
Oh my God!
Wow.
I was like, and we all know how much I hate him. It may be because of my headspace right now. It's not something I wanted to read. I felt it was depressing. I felt it was pointless. And I just felt like at the end, like it was a waste of my time. The story did not enrich my life at all. And that's the trick when you're a writer. You know, you have to make the story engaging. It has to connect, and you want to make people read you again. Nobody reads my work, so I totally get it. You know, so
I read your billboard.
right. So, but there was nothing redeeming about it, and I won't revisit it because like I have read books like that too, but I don't care enough about her to want to revisit. Like at least with Luther Strode, it's so bad. I'm like, God, how much worse is it going to get?
I will have to say you've made this point several times. It was when we step away from like the capes and cowls, and it was a nice break from just gore and punching and machine guns and
it was that
and stupid
Power
superhero.
stance, epilogues,
Yeah,
and
it was a nice break from that.
I thought about that too because we just read what did we read about monsters? Something monsters.
What I Love Are Monsters. What's the name?
Everything
Of
I love.
My favorite thing is monsters,
right.
and that's kind of autobiographical.
that? To the to the listener, they're gonna be like, that was just the last episode.
Right.
We've taken a break, a holiday
Yeah.
break. We took like almost a month and a half off.
Yeah, but I think because that was so well done, this to me kind of maybe fell short because you had this beautiful, artistic, like conflict resolution, a cliffhanger, and this. Maybe if I read this first, I would have been more receptive to it.
Yeah, and there was a lot of heaviness, twists, you know, hurt, pain coming to resolution, and whereas this, it was just kind of self-centered mopiness.
Well, I'm the opposite of everyone. I actually love the book, and I was sold within the first few pages. Comparing it to My Favorite Things as Monsters, it's interesting because this is very tightly structured, whereas Monsters felt like it was chaos because illustrations were everywhere. You didn't know what the next page would look like. Wording was everywhere. This one had more structure, which I think helped the author maybe focus more, which you guys would argue wouldn't. She wasn't focused.
I think she did. I think you said like with her control, this is how she controlled her story. This is my layout is not going to vary. I can keep this every day.
But unlike My Favorite Thing is Monsters, there's definitely not a feeling that everything is connected because you don't have a sense that everything's happening day by day. It's just kind of random slices of life. I really liked it. I felt it addressed kind of anxiety and depression in a great way. Obviously, I have great sympathy for that. And it's interesting because I felt like as I was reading this, besides the parent-child relationship, it made me think about Lady Bird. I felt like how you
I thought you were
viewed...
going to say The Last Jedi.
Yeah, that too. Well, Last Jedi or Lady Bird. How you see the film is sometimes filtered by your life experiences a lot. Especially that particular film, because if you're a child in a certain type of relationship with your parent, if you're a daughter as opposed to a son, if you're relating to your mom or your dad, this one, I think if you have a certain relationship with your parent, you definitely see it in a different way than someone who has a completely opposite relationship. And I felt that way. Like I talked to people about Lady Bird, and depending upon their relationship with their mom and if they were a daughter or a son, they interpret Lady Bird very differently. Or if you're a parent, even if you are a parent as well, whereas Johnny and Francis are not parents.
You have a point though, because I'm not trying to sidetrack you. Sorry, Gilmore Girls. I watched it in high school and I loved it, and then I rewatched it on Netflix. So in high school, I related with Rory,
right.
And now that I'm in my 30s, I was like, oh no, Lorelai is right. Like the mom is right.
Or Sasha and I we started rewatching again. And I was like, these people are so fucking self-centered.
Mm-hmm.
Like I could not watch the show again.
My YouTube videos.
What?
what were you watching?
Gilmore
Girls.
Yeah.
Oh, you watched Gilmore Girls?
I loved that when it was on a decade and a half ago.
For shame, Johnny.
And then I watched it again. We tried to get back into it when they did the Netflix relaunch.
Yeah.
And I was like, these people are fucking horrible. They're horrible, self-centered, selfish, and just inward-looking people. Like that's all they care about are themselves, and they're fucking filthy rich. They have no problems in their lives. And why am I watching this?
That could be art in general, right? You're always seeing it through a filter. It's not just a pure experience where everyone is going to share the same interpretation. Mm-hmm. So depending upon your filter, Johnny's life, Francis' life, my life, how you see everything is Flammable or Lady Bird is all dependent on where you are in your life or your experiences you've had. So for me, I enjoyed it. I related to it. I understand the structure was very loose, but I went with it. And so, I don't know, I felt the author accomplished things. Was there like a lesson to be learned at the end? No. But that's kind of how life is.
I do really like the last illustration in the book of the dog that she took a photo of earlier.
Right.
I just something about it I really enjoyed.
Oh, yeah, and the art, I really like the art.
Yeah.
So
she's making a sequel called Everything is Inflammable?
Anyway, Johnny, where can people find you?
On Twitter, Serious Talk Twit. And Instagram, I never remember what it is, ever.
That's a really long
Just
address.
type in Johnny Flores and you'll find me on there. There's always pictures of my dogs in my backyard.
How about you, Francis?
People can find me on Instagram at Words in Waffles.
And you can follow the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at GN Explorers Club.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks. Thanks again for joining us for today's episode of Graphic Novel Explorers Club. Next week, we'll be looking at the book Generations by Flavia Biondi. Do you even know what Esquire actually means?
A lawyer.
Yeah. And
how dare you? How dare the both of you insult my intelligence?
Well, it's really just clarifying.